Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a deep dive analysis on the Tier 6 Premium Light Cruiser for the French Navy. This is the de Grasse, the Cash Grass or Ass de Grasse. And now why are we talking about the de Grasse today, ladies and gentlemen? Well, very simple. This is the Battle Pass ship there on the paid progression line or the second tier progression line coming to update 14.7. And like I always do on this channel, I always want to give a little bit of insight on these ships just so players can better yet understand potentially what they may or may not be buying or getting their hands on if they decide to get this Battle Pass. As you know, we've had a buttload of older premium ships enter that of the Battle Pass second-tiered progression lines. Agincourt, Molotov, London, for example, just to name a couple, which I have all featured on this channel before. And now it comes to the de Grasse. This ship, in my opinion, is a fun ship. I play this ship quite a bit, and especially to get game footage for you guys. I think I played her like, 10, 15 times, just to get some adequate footage in this ship, to get a better understanding of her as well. Now, I've played her about a fair amount of times, about 35, 40 times now, and I'm only averaging maybe just slightly at a 50% win rate. And that is not to sway you from anything. That is to show you that before I knew how to play the game, because this was one of my first premium ships I actually obtained, I didn't really know how to play her that well, and I found myself losing quite a bit of games, getting rather lackluster numbers in her. But now recently here, with 8, 9 plus years of playing this game, I picked her back up, played the 10, 12 games to get some footage for you guys, and I actually averaged around a 70% win rate for you guys. So I understand the ship a little bit better now, with my cruiser expertise, play style as well, and I guess knowledge, so I can come to the table and talk a little bit about her and give you a better insight on how to play this ship and kind of what makes her tick. And like we always do with this ship, we're going to dig under the hood and talk about her, starting with the armor layout and all that jazz. But right before we do that, I have to talk about what this ship's exact counterpart is, because this is the premium tier 6 version, and this is a Le Glaçonnière class cruiser. So obviously we're going to be comparing the ship heavily to the tier 6 Le Glaçonnière, which is also what you can find in the tech tree for the French cruisers. And what is the big differences between the two ships? There's some marginal differences, like, I don't know, like name off a couple off my head, like maybe HP pool differences or stuff like that. There's always slight marginal tweaks that Wargaming does to say there's differences. But the big thing you have to understand between the de Grasse and the Le Glaçonnière is the Grasse has a little bit of a faster reload, which is going to average higher DPM over time, and it's already baked into the ship. Obviously, you're a tier 6 cruiser, you're probably going to take damage, so that coupled with your adrenaline rush skill can really help with upping your DPM. And because you're slinging HE down range at a heightened rate, your fire setting potential is going to be a little bit higher. Now, on the contrary, what does the Le Glaçonnière get? Well, the Le Glaçonnière actually has a slower reload, but it has the main battery reload consumable that it can utilize. And this is good for min-maxing fire set on target. So if I go ahead and set one fire on a battleship, for example, and that battleship goes ahead and damage controls it, and it lasts around 10 seconds, I can go ahead and immediately pop that main battery reload booster, which I believe the Le Glaçonnière has about a 9-second reload. Pop that main battery reload booster that reduces my reload by 50% and go ahead and get 4 or 5 salvos off down range, coupled with that 12% fire chance, and I can go ahead and potentially light either 1 to 2 perma-fires on that vessel. So basically, the Le Glaçonnière is going to have a little bit of a min-max, where the quickened reload time already is baked into the de Grasse. So you're gonna, I guess it's less to manage, so to speak, when you're doing that. It's just more focused on kiting and HE spamming rather than the Glaçonnière min-maxing that consumable button to go ahead and really get those fires set on target, which again could be more detrimental at times, but also could be a little bit more of a taxing usage of your brain to some players. And again, that's just going to be on you as a commander when you get comfortable and really understanding when and when not to utilize your main battery reload booster. I think it's all those things, it's just learning scenarios and then applying the knowledge you have in those scenarios to really get the most out of your consumables. But I don't want to talk theory that much. I want to go ahead and show you the hard numbers, kind of talk about the Grasse a little bit, and then go ahead and show you some gameplay on her as well. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and showcase the armor layout, and what you're going to notice right off the get-go is, yeah, this thing screams light cruiser. 16 millimeter nose, 16 millimeter ass. We have about a 16 millimeter upper belt with about 100 millimeters of effective armor plating, which again, that's going to be correlating to our Citadel with a 25 millimeter deck on the, not the Grasse, the Grasse. Going ahead and looking at the Citadel, this is quite the above water Citadel, easy to be punished, not hard to miss either. This ship can and will be Citadeled if not played correctly, and especially knowing where enemy battleships are on the map is essential to keeping this thing alive. Obviously with the 16 millimeter nose, this thing can be overmatched, so you have to be careful when engaging enemy battleships, and I would highly recommend engaging enemy battleships at range, and we're going to talk a little bit about that going forward once we talk about a little bit more about the ship. Survivability, 31,200 with a 10% torpedo belt reduction, similar to that of the Grasse, who is also coming in at 10% torpedo belt reduction, but the health pool on the Grasse is just slightly smaller, around 3,000 less. There with 27,300, or 4,000 less, excuse me. So the Grasse already having a little bit more baked into the ship as well. The Grasse, again, this is something that you're going to notice when you play with like differences between the two ships. The HP pool is so much more essential, especially that on lower tier cruisers. I mean, they're essential on all cruisers, let's be honest, but basically lower tier cruisers because you usually have no keel, and that's the case here as well. So you're really going to have to pick your spots and know when to fire, when not to fire, when to go dark, and especially utilize your island coverage as well. Moving into the artillery, and I'm going to get this right out the gates and talk about this. Sometimes I don't mention the turret firing angles all the time, so I want to go ahead and pinpoint that. The turret firing angles on this number 3 turret are very, very, well, and not very poor, but less than ideal. I do find myself showcasing a lot more broadside than I need to be, especially within the kited position. So you're going to have to swivel a lot when playing the ship in order to get all 9 turrets to bear. And that's what I'd recommend in the, the 4th slot, I believe. That's why I'm recommending the steering gears modification 1, because I can swivel and get that 3rd turret to bear more often. Therefore, I'm sending 9 152 millimeter shells downrange rather than just 6 potentially. I know some people are going to yell at me in the comments and say, or potentially yell at me in the comments, or think in their minds and say, hey, why not use the prop mod? This is going to allow you to rudder juke better at range. It's going to throw off enemy battleships at range. It's going to help you just overall general, especially when you're island camping, which you're going to be showcasing in the video. And it's like, absolutely, I 100% agree with you. Just for me, in most scenarios, I'm a greedy little son of a bitch, and I really want to get that 3rd turret to bear, because if I can, the difference between sending 6 HE shells or AP shells downrange via 9, that's a big difference. And I don't want to, only have 2/3 of my DPM going down range and cutting out 1/3 of my DPM. I want to make sure I'm utilizing all that, especially when I'm in the kited position. And that is where I am going to be for 60-70% of the game, is because that's where the strength of the ship lies. Again, this is emphasizing the word kiting. We've talked about this in the channel a lot, especially in our cruisers. There are some ships that you really don't need a kite. They're not really fitting to their play style. But this is one of those ships. And tech tree lines, which is the Honre, the 4th. You're really going to want to learn the art of the kite, and it's going to help you guys out a ton, especially not only doing damage, but also becoming the target of enemy ships and battleships who are going to waste their salvos aimlessly at a target that's 16, 18, 19 kilometers away from them, that's hitting them with HE reliability. They're going to get pissed. They're going to make stupid maneuvers, and they're going to want to tuck tail and run, or they're going to continuously keep pushing in there because they just want you dead. And you're going to outplay them. And that's the beauty about cruiser gameplay in this game, is I really feel like I'm outthinking the enemy when I play my cruisers, and that's what I want to do. And the Grasse, again, is one of those ships that you're going to have to be able to do that. And it's a good, because it's a low tier 2 at tier 6, it's going to teach you to do that too. So I really like tier 6 as a teaching tier. Tier 5 and tier 6 is a very, very good tier that really teaches the game moving forward. And I can't stress that enough. That's why I start all my down the line series at tier 5, because I feel like that's a big jump from, 1 through 4. Once you go to tier 5, that's the first very big jump. And then again, when you go from tier 8 to 9, that's another big jump in the game as well because you've entered the top tier. So, de Grasse, going back to what I originally was talking about, the turret firing angles, the number 3 turret is rather lackluster, especially when pushing in or kiting. So, going into the 3x3 152 millimeter guns that this ship does come with, it has an 8.1 second base reload, about 15 seconds to have the 180-degree turret traverse, and your maximum range is 16.2, which actually is not half bad. I do like that range that this ship is coming with. And if I go to the where are you? If I go to the range on these ships, I believe the Montcalm, which I think it's a Lee Air class cruiser as well, actually is insanely above the pack at 18 kilometers. But then you have the de Grasse coming in 6th, only behind the Boutonnier, the Ellie, the Nuremberg, and the Admiral Markov. So it's right there, and those are coming from like 16.6. So it's like it's right there in the mix of having very, very good range for the tier. So I really do like that. It's flexible and allows me to play exactly where I want to play to make this thing shine. Also, a side note, with 180-degree turn time of 15 seconds, going into the high explosive shells, you have that 2200 maximum damage with a 12% fire chance that can go ahead and pen 25 millimeters of armor with 870 meters a second shell velocity. Again, the 12% fire chance is pretty good. You will be quite the little flamethrower, and it's noticeable. And it is clocking in around exactly 8.0 fires a minute with that reload time of 8.1 seconds with your 12% fire chance, where the Grasse is only clocking in at a 7.2 fires a minute, again with equal fire chance, but that lack of DPM, about another second on its reload, that's when it is. But then again, if you go ahead and proc that main battery reload booster, obviously that goes skyrocketing. Again, what I talked about in the beginning of the video with the min-maxing with the main battery reload booster. Touching on the armor piercing shells, again, 3,300 maximum damage, again, matching the shell velocity of the HE shells at 870 meters a second. Comfortable shells. You're only really going to notice this when you're about 15 kilometers or out. You do have to take the appropriate lead, but again, I didn't find myself missing too many salvos, especially at that range. So it should be fairly comfortable for you guys. We are going to touch base, I guess, on a little bit of the 100 millimeter secondary mounts. You got 3x2 of these, reload in 4 seconds, maximum range of 5.9, clocking in at 1400 damage with a 6% fire chance, only penning 17 millimeters. These are basically anti-DDE, close engagement shells, again, with the occasional cruisers that can pen front and ass. Again, don't really rely too much on the secondaries. You have them, though, but don't rely too much on them because they're not really going to do much for you. Going on the torpedoes, you do have the 2x3 550 millimeter torpedoes. These torpedoes have a 180-degree turn time of 6 seconds, and they reload in about 90 seconds. They have a maximum range of 9 kilometers, clocking in at damage totals of 14,833 with a speed of 60 knots and 1.3 kilometer detectability range. Again, the Le Glaçonnière torps, if we're going to compare and contrast the Le Glaçonnière to the de Grasse, the de Grasse has 90 seconds for reload time, where the Le Glaçonnière has 60 seconds. So I guess it's going to get torpedoes up a little bit faster, but same torpedo DPM, same torpedo damage, same speed detectability, reaction time of 8.1 seconds, and you're hitting about, torpedoes per minute is about 4.0. I guess it's nice. The Le Glaçonnière has nicer torpedoes, I guess, so to speak. Just because it has the 60-second reload time. The only difference is that the Grasse has 2 launchers of 3 torpedoes, which is going to be pretty standardized down the line going from the Algerets down to the Honore, whereas the Le Glaçonnière only has 2 torpedoes of 2 per broadside, so you have 1 less torpedo. Just to keep that in mind, I guess, is it's an interesting little tidbit. Again, differences between the 2 ships. Again, French torpedoes are kind of weird anyways, because they have that weird range of 9 kilometers, and relatively speaking, I don't really land too many of my French torpedoes, nor am I finding myself in situations to launch my French torpedoes, because it's really out of their element anyways to be launching them if you're within those 9 kilometers or right around that 9 to 10 kilometers with the ship sailing into them. To land the torpedo hits. I find them if I am in late game pushing around corners, or defending myself, they're kind of that deterrence, or sending them out in a general area where I think a destroyer is kind of stalking me and keeping me spotted, and then he happens to sail into one. Those are really the 2 scenarios that I can really think of these torpedoes being useful. Other than that, it's kind of this weird thing where like 9 kilometers, like what the fuck? I'm not really not going to use 9-kilometer torpedoes. So it's interesting, right? I do kind of wish that they would have altered it, kind of like the Italians. The Italians have like a 13.5-kilometer torpedo range. I kind of wish they would have done something like a 12-kilometer. That would be pretty nice because those are like usable torpedoes for where I want to be playing my ship. And I'll go into more about that later. But yeah, just a little hot take by me, that is, with my French cruisers. A defense. Now, as you saw in the like wargaming snippet I post always in the beginning of my videos, it talked about like reinforced AA or like notable AA upgrades. All lies. All lies. Because your AA, in my opinion and in my experience, is pretty much dog water, tier for tier. Tier 6 aircraft, they're going to love you. Tier 8 aircraft are going to have their way with you. Yeah, it's just you're not there adequately enough. And relatively speaking, even with if you opt to use that defensive AA fire consumable, which again I wouldn't, it's still not going to be that noticeable. You might hit the occasional bad CV with a flak burst or two that could nullify his squadron and cut it down by half or whatnot. But relatively speaking, as you can see the numbers on the bottom right hand of the screen here, I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's nice you have a firing range of 5.8, but I mean, with your long range damage of 74, and then you go to the medium range, which is 3 kilometers with 21. I mean, that's a massive gap. And again, your hit probabilities are ass. I mean, other than the long range is going to be your big damage dealer with the 90% accuracy and the 74 damage. Other than that, though, I mean, you get in close, terrible, absolutely terrible. Well, speaking of which, did I talk about the flak on this thing? I probably should. Yeah, you have 2 flak explosions. Great, right? Shouldn't be too hard to dodge if you're a CV commander out there. So. Going into the maneuverability of the ship, it does look like the max speed clocking in at 33.5 knots with a turning circle radius of 690 meters and a rudder shift time standard coming base of 8.8 seconds. So here are some differences between the Grasse that we need to understand. So the Grasse's base speed is going to be faster than that of the Grasse. The Grasse max speed is 31.0 knots, where the Grasse already has 33.5 knots. So the Grasse is going to be humming around the map way quicker. And this is a sizable difference, in my opinion. I know it's like floppy, it's only 2.5 knots quicker. But when you emphasize that French speed boost I have, which is what, plus 15% on the French speed boost, and especially with me running, I'll show you guys real quick, which I do highly recommend, this engine boost modification 1, extending that action time even further to 30, 30% longer. And I'm clocking in at 234 seconds with a 90-second cooldown, and I get 3 pops base. Excellent ship. And that is what I want to talk about since we're on this topic already. The speed boost. This ship's gimmick, again, which used to be back then, the French, line in general, the gimmick used to be speed. Speed. And this ship, obviously, when it came out back in those days, 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere around there, I can't really put my finger on it, but that is what this thing excels at. So why would I not want to extend the amount of time that this ship is ripping around the map, where I can bob and weave and juke and stop and all this stuff with that plus 15%? I believe with the plus 15%, it's not uncommon to get up to about 36 knots. I could be wrong on that, and I'll make sure you'll look down at my speed when it's on in game. You can see, but you're definitely going to notice that it's prominent, it's potent, and if any battleship player out there, including myself, that knows if you have less than ideal shell velocity on your battleship, looking at you Americans, leading this thing is a bit of a hassle, right? So that's what I want to talk about. The gimmick of this ship is its speed, because that's what the original, when the line came out, that's what it had. Obviously, it's been altered now to have this main battery reload booster as well to help emphasize this like hit and run kiting playstyle. The Grasse doesn't have that. It just has a faster reload time baked in, plus that speed boost gimmick like the olden days. So olden days, OG World of Warships, Henry Line, the 4th, or whatever, that's what the Grasse is kind of trying to mimic. The acceleration is a tad slower by a second at 26.1 seconds to achieve full speed. The Grasse has 25.1. Again, subtle differences. Rudder shift time on the Grasse is a whole second better. It has 7.7, whereas the de Grasse has 8.8. And again, from the de Grasse 690 meter turning circle radius, the Le Grasse can turn tighter at 650. Again, subtle differences, and that is again why with my turning circle radius upgraded, I'm going ahead and getting it, you know, with the steering gears modification 1. So it's just one of those things that I can't help but stress more so with you guys, right? So going into the concealment values, pretty actually like higher detectability for a tier 6 cruiser, it looks like. If we go to the detectability by sea, obviously the Trento, the Duplé, the Pensacola, and then we have the de Grasse at 4, right? Ranked 1 through 4 there. And the Grasse also is tied with it at 12.9 base. If we go ahead and add our commander, 11.6, we're getting it down to. Again, which isn't bad, but that is why I recommend on the captain build, we're going to go ahead and take top grade gunner because it's going to allow us to play within that detectability range. And if we find ourselves that deep, we're going to go ahead and get that 8% reload buff. So that is the ship basically in total. Down with all the stats, talking about her, kind of deep dive on her. You know, for some little bit takes, I'm going to talk about her here and there before we get into battle. But basically, the ideal place to play this cruiser is between 14 to, I would say, 12. But I'd even go up to around 15 to 12 kilometers out. This is going to allow you to be able to dodge effectively enemy incoming salvos and be very much of a cockroach, a pest, a nuisance at range. Slinging HE downrange every 8.1 seconds. That is what this ship does. I have gotten multiple arsonist achievements with this thing, and it really does help me do some, I guess, dockyard missions also when the dockyard comes, doing, you know, demolition experts and like setting fires and all that jazz. It really does help. And again, your potential damage will go skyrocketing because battleships will shoot at you, and if you get skilled enough, you'll completely dodge the entire salvo. Again, with the one compensation shell that somehow deviates from the entire salvo and always hits you, that happens, blah, blah, so and so, whatever. But yeah, that is one thing that you will notice this ship is extremely good at, incredibly good at, incredibly fun. Okay, that is again what I'm trying to tell you. The fun factor of this ship is there. So with that regards, I can recommend her completely for the fun factor alone. I do have a fun, and that's coming from a cruiser main, someone who enjoys cruisers, all shapes and sizes, all different play styles. It's fun. And that's why I gravitate towards the French cruisers too. I find their play style fun. And again, a little bit of a side grade to it, if you do the Marseille line, super fun as well. Bigger guns, hit and run tactics, making maneuvers, making enemies not realize that you flanked and came around. It's just, again, the French cruisers are a blast. I cannot recommend them enough. And then number 2, what I have noticed is if you play, this is kind of like a, you know, quality of life kind of thing. If you are playing against people, so you're playing as your de Grasse and you're going against people who have, let's say, they're playing on fucking ThinkPads for laptops. Your camouflage scheme, not only does it look cool aesthetically, can actually be very deceiving and throw people off. We've seen this with like the Missouri blue paint scheme as well. There are some camo schemes in the game that people who are running the game on low resolution or have poor performance of their computers can actually aid you and benefit you directly and hurt them in regards of their aiming, whatnot. So again, you're going to notice it? Probably not. Most people probably don't have that issue, but for the occasional person that does, it is out there. It is noticeable. So I wanted to throw that out there as well. So, but yeah, guys, that is the de Grasse. This is the port analysis part of the video, and we're going to go ahead and move into the battle. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Alrighty then, here we are in battle with the de Grasse. So a couple things that I want to mention. This ship is awesome if it is top tier. It is all right if it is at tier 7. So it's what? Not really bottom tier, but it is up tier to tier 7. It's good. It can be good, right? In the right hands, right? Especially if you know what you're doing. Into tier 8. Yikes. Not very good. Really going to have to play passive. You're going to be playing basically at 15 plus kilometers, 16, almost at max range almost all the time. It's just going to happen. So I wanted to get that out of the way and mention that right out of the get-go because I'm not going to beat around the bush. The ship does not up tier very well. But then again, do most tier 6 cruisers up tier to tier 8 very well? Maybe the Grasse, maybe because it has a heal. I don't know. Just going to be frank with you guys, right? But that being said, there is still a lot of fun to be had with the ship, and it is still incredibly strong, especially if you know what you're doing. And that is the key. Know what you are doing. So I'm going to go ahead and list a couple tips, a couple tricks that really help me with my Grasse gameplay overall that translate not only to this particular ship, but to cruisers in general. I think it really can help you. And the first thing I'm going to say is when you position yourself, you know what you're going to do by supporting your allies, know what flank you're going to go to, you're going to want to turn out, and you're going to want to kite. Notice I dropped my torpedoes. They're only 9 kilometers. This is what I'm thinking. It's going to have to be a submarine, or it could potentially be a DD, but mainly probably a sub, because subs match, mirror match each other, at A especially. And I'm going to just blind fire. Like, fuck it, right? I'm going to blind fire. He's probably on the surface. Obviously, he is on the surface. He's capping. Maybe I'll get lucky. And he goes ahead and gets spotted by our submarine, so I can go ahead and salt and pepper him a little bit with some HE. But then I realized that there was no battleships being able to shoot me. Obviously, their Issei wasn't concerned about shooting. He was more positioned about getting into behind the island so he can just play aircraft carrier all game, which, again, is his prerogative. Go at it. And I can just basically rip up to the cap and be able to support my submarine with ASW. And that's what I'm going to do. One thing, again, I'd highly recommend, because of the shell velocity, it's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. And you can definitely position yourself around islands, and you can definitely lob HE over islands. And this is something you're going to hear me say almost all the time. If you're in a cruiser, and you can, I guess with DDs too and battleships, it all depends, right? It all depends on the scenario. But in general terms, if you can sit behind an island and someone like our submarine or another DD or whatever is going to spot for you, and you can essentially just trade, how much HP that they're going to have for your 0 HP and fire with impunity, absolutely do it. Why would you not do that? It's essentially just free damage at this point. So highly recommend you to consider doing that, especially with this ship, especially in early game. You can utilize your speed boost or speed in general just to get up there behind an island position early, and you can sit there and camp depending on if you have the vision. Obviously, it depends on the map. This map has a nice, comfortable island that allows me to do this. Some caps don't have that. Some maps don't have that. Some capture points don't have that. So you really have to, it's really map dependent, right? So just keep that in mind when you are loading in and you first see what map you're on and what tier is in your game, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So that's my first thing. Again, so you have the kite and you can utilize islands. They're pretty generic stuff, pretty generic cruiser level shit that should be applied not only to this ship, but to all cruisers, right? Okay. Number 2 is rudder juking and speed juking. Okay. Obviously, if you have prop mod, engine juking is vastly easier and more superior just because you have that plus minus, 50% engine power that it takes in time to accelerate. Way easier to do. But with the rudder shift time, when you see that muzzle flash, and potentially if you have your speed boost up, when you're kited away, go ahead and full reverse in your kite and turn out. This will go ahead and dodge. Again, people should probably know this by now. Not that hard. Because with the Grasse's armor scheme, you're not going to want to sit there and eat shells, potentially, and have chances of ricochets. It's just not really in the cards for you with your 16mm nose, ass, and 100mm of belt armor. I mean, yes, you have 100mm of belt armor, which, again, is your Citadel belt. You can ricochet, but your upper belt is only, 16 as well? Good luck, right? And with a 25mm deck, it still could get overmatched by 380mm guns. Hence, this Queen Elizabeth can do that. So, not really a good choice either. So you can have that plunging fire citadels by battleships as well. And God forbid if you run into a German aircraft carrier or a Japanese with those AP dive bombers or whatnot, can absolutely send you home packing to port so incredibly quickly. So, as you see, here we go. We're in a pre-kited position utilizing all of our turrets while we are firing with impunity at the Queen Elizabeth, who really has no counter to us, even though you can tell he's getting agitated and pissed. Obviously, be careful with your speed boost active. You will rip and tear way quicker than if you didn't, and you can expose yourself out into the open if you are not careful, which we did just there. You always want to be careful of battleships, especially like I hear, for example, when they fire. You're going to want to know where they are at all times because that is your biggest threat. Because they can send you home packing in a single salvo. Obviously, cruisers can punish you too. I'm not saying they can't, but let's be honest, battleships with their larger caliber guns, their harder hitting armor piercing, those are the ships you really have to be careful of, right? So, another tip that I want to touch base on, this is going to be again in more of my like more intermediate, more expert level cruiser gameplay tips that I'll do down the road, way down the road. I don't know whenever I get around to that, but it is something that I think I'm going to start advertising now to say that I said this and I practice this and it works. A tactic you can utilize with or without your speed boost is when you're finding yourself at longer ranges, and this thing I would say 14, 15, 16 kilometers. And battleships or ships fire. It's mainly used against battleships, and battleships fire at you. What you want to do is when you know they're in between reloads, go down in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and just go half power. Okay, go half power, sail it in a cutaway position, shooting all your guns at half power. And when that battleship player aims accordingly and shoots his next salvo, go down to stop or reverse. You will dodge the salvo almost every time. Almost every time. And why is that? Well, the way that the aiming system is coded into the game, it really allows you and gives you a distinct advantage when the kited position. Everybody knows in this game that when a ship is kited, that ship has a clear and distinct advantage because the aiming system that what Wargaming has programmed into the game really can't compute with that very well. If you ever find yourself shooting at ships that are kited at ranges like that, you always see like your shells never go where you want them to go. You never leave them appropriately. Either you'll go above or below. Your vertical dispersion is ass. Like there's always something wrong with it, and that's not uncommon, and that's not a a mystery, so to speak. It is in the game. It is a thing. Okay, so again, try that tactic out, half speed, fully kite it out at those ranges, and when he fires, you can go ahead and go reverse it, go basically engine power, cut your engine power completely, and the salvo will go all in front of you. It's also very misleading because at those ranges, when you're going half speed, your engine, like funnel smoke, is still looking like you're going full speed, and they don't really gauge that very well all the time, and they're more often than not miss. The only time this doesn't work, okay, and that I found, especially when you're humming at 15, 16, whatever ranges, especially when you're at tier 10 doing the same thing, is if you're fighting battleships that have horrendous like shell velocity. So, for example, the Vermont at times, the Montana is another big one, right? Those ships that have those floaty ass salvos at those ranges, that could lead to problems because when you're going half speed and then you cut it, well, they might have not led you the correct amount, but you're basically going to be stopping right where their salvo was aimed for. It's a weird little thing, but I will throw that as a red flag. You got to be careful of that. So, but going back in the game, talking about the Grasse is you're seeing that her DPM is outstanding, and her HE DPM more often than not is outstanding. Her fires, she's a fire fucking flamethrower essentially. Fire starting machine. Sadly, as you can see on the map, we are losing this game, and I will spoil it for you. We do end up losing this game, but again, I don't highlight or showcase videos based upon the outcome or the rank usually. It's mainly just highlighting what the ship excels at so you can have a visual to see how I play it and what works for me. Obviously, we lose this game. Is it my fault? I don't really think so. I mean, could I have been more reactive? Gone back when I saw the middle had no one? Absolutely. And going back behind that island, having to do like a 3-point turn wasn't really helping myself because that's all time that I could have been utilized potentially coming back and eliminating these ships earlier. Like, I totally understand. I totally get it that I am maybe a little bit to blame for this, but you have to understand, like, this is random battles. I don't know what the other, in this smaller game, I guess, what 8 or 9 players are thinking or doing. No one's coordinating. Everyone's just playing shooty boats at this point, which is rather sad. But yeah, I mean, it looked like it would have been a game, but basically when our aircraft carrier stays bow in to the enemy submarine, and our battleships don't want to move, yeah, it turns out to be a little bit of a fucking, not a blowout, but I'm gonna go ahead and call it a blowout, as we are losing by almost, the enemy team basically has almost double our points. So, anything else to touch? I guess like this is part of the video where I do like my final thoughts, as we're closing in the last like 3 minutes of the battle. I mean, my final thoughts right out the gate are that this ship is a lot of fun. I think for the fun factor alone, this ship is going to be worth, what is it, the 2,500 or 3,000 dubs cost for the battle pass. I believe in the premium store, this ship was sold for like 5,500 or 6,500 dubs, somewhere around there. No more than 7 for sure, because I think a 7 to 8 is like around a tier 7 back in the day. But around 5 to 6 dubs in the armory or premium store or whatever. And then for the 2,500 dubs cost or 3,000 dubs cost, whatever the battle pass is going to be, this ship alone for the fun factor is worth it. Cannot stress that enough. Competitiveness. If we're going to talk about competitiveness with the de Grasse, well, I mean, if they ever do tier 6 ranked, which I don't think they do, I guess you have ranked battles with like tier 6s can participate with tier 6 and tier 7s and like bronze league, maybe they still do that. I'm not sure. Would you want to play this ship? I mean, I wouldn't recommend anyone play a lower tier ship when you could be playing a tier 7 in a ranked like format like that. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But yeah, I think she's pretty good, but she doesn't bring any like thing shiny to the battle. This is like on-day French cruiser gameplay, and that's what I like about her. She doesn't have any funny buttons, relatively speaking, and her only, I guess, gimmick is her speed boost. And if you know how to utilize it right, you build into that, you can really get a lot out of the ship. And again, circling back to the fun factor of the vessel is a lot for me. I do find myself playing the ship a lot in missions, in just random schmo tier 6 gameplay, just because it's so much fun. And I don't know if there's a lot of ships at this tier that I can say that about. And the core, again, aesthetically pleasing. It looks really pretty. The ship itself is very, very pretty to look at. And she's a premium ship, and she's a premium crew trainer as well. If you can bounce commanders on if you are into that. So all in all, I think she's a fun ship to play. Pretty good. Again, if you play tier 6, like operations, if you want, I know some people that play operations, they always look to add new ships to their operation armada. Yeah, this ship is good in operations. You can get to the positions you need to get to fast with that speed boost, and go and support allies relatively quickly. And again, it can pump lead down range at a frightening rate. Again, not the fastest, but not the slowest. But again, with 152 millimeter guns that are pumping out 12% fire chance on these HE shells, this ship is pretty good. So I can definitely tip my hat to that and say that I can recommend this ship with a whole hell of a doubt. And I do hope you guys, for those that are on the fence about the battle pass for a 14.7, I mean, I don't think the ship should be the sole factor depending whether or not you want to pick up the battle pass. But if it is a big factor, I can 100% stand behind the de Grasse and say that this ship is well worth the 2,500 doubloons, or 2,500 doubloons that that Wargaming will potentially be asking for this second tier progression battle pass line. So but yeah, if there's anything I missed, guys, go ahead and fire it in the comments. I don't think I did. I think I did a decently good job about illustrating the strengths and the weaknesses of this ship. But like always, guys, stay tuned for the channel. I'm going to be doing what I can and releasing videos when I can, and make sure that I inform the community about things like the de Grasse here for the Battle Pass. So anyways, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.